Good morning, everybody. My name is Sylvie COULON. I'm working in DG Santé in the unit Bilateral Relation, and I'm dealing with SPS issue, sanitary and phytosanitary issue. Today, the title of my presentation is EU Management System for Residue of Pesticides and Contaminants. This slide illustrates what is the main regulatory life cycle of a plant protection product. You can see three phases: a production phase, a use phase, and a consumption phase. And each phase is regulated at EU level. And at the bottom of this slide, you have the name and the title of the regulation responsible for the production phase. For example, regulation EC 1107/2009 on placing of plant protection product on the market. The use phase is regulated by the Directive 2009/128 on sustainable use of this pesticide. And the third one, the consumption phase, is regulated at EU level by the Regulation 396/2005 on the maximum residue limit of pesticide. This slide illustrates who is doing what at the EU level. You can see on the left side what is mentioned in blue and what is mentioned in white. It means that regarding the approval of the plant protection product, the approval is made at EU level, rather than the authorization is made at EU and national level. It's very important to keep in mind that there is two processes: the approval of the substance which has been done by the EU at EU level, but the authorization depends on member state. And it's a phase of production. After that, you have the phase, I remember the cycle of the plant protection product, the use. The use is regulated at national level. It's in white on this slide. And the last phase, the third phase, the phase of consumption, is regulated at EU level. And now it's mentioned in blue. And on the right side of this slide, you can see, I would say, the opposition between the approval of the active substance at EU level rather than the authorization of the approved active substance will be done at national level, and what we call formulated product, which of course contains active substances which has been approved at EU level. This slide just illustrates what is, since many sanitary crises in the EU, we have put in place in 2002 a Food Safety Authority, EFSA, and the EFSA is responsible for carrying out the risk assessment, which is completely independent for the risk management taken by the decider at the Commission level. And this slide illustrates who is doing what. The industry, we have put in place or found the active substances, send an applicant dossier to the Commission. And the Commission submit this file to EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, to evaluate the dossier. But the first phase of the risk assessment, risk evaluation, is carried out by what we call a member state rapporteur, ERMS. And the member state who will do, I would say, the first evaluation will issue what we call a draft assessment report, DAR. And once this draft assessment report has been issued, it will be discussed between the member state and the European Food Safety Authority and with experts, scientists, and what we call a peer review of this draft assessment report. And finally, they reach a conclusion of this report. And once this assessment report has been finalized, after the member state first evaluation discussed later with experts belonging to member state and the European Food Safety Authority, we got a final assessment report which will be discussed between the Commission and all the 27 member states to see if we have to go to approve or not this active substance. It is the process of the way when an applicant submits substance active, the way this active substance has been evaluated. And I think it's very important to see the separation between the risk assessment and the risk management. Again, this slide is a kind of repetition, but it's very important to distinguish between what is done at EU level and what has been done and possible at national level. On the left part of the slide, you can see that the approval of substance has been done at EU level rather than when the active substance has been approved, it has been authorized at national level. And you can see the different, I would say, steps, as already described, that has been put in place at EU level and at national level. And this slide, it's a good summary of what has been done in when an applicant submits an active substance. Of course, there is a need to review the approval because the approval is not granted forever. The approval for active substances normally are limited in time and require, of course, systematic periodic renewal, and it is the case in every country in the world. Normally, an active substance is renewed every 15 years for, I would say, what we call regular active substances. The first approval period lasts only 10 years. And there is also some candidate, instead of 15 years, some active substances are obliged to be revised every 5 years. And maybe you are aware, we have granted a period of revision for some substance active for the shorter period. And the big case and very sensitive case, the recent years, is the case of glyphosate. And of course, for glyphosate, the period of revision is shorter than, I would say, the current regular revision of approval. And of course, the substance which are subject to a revision they are grouped in batches to be, of course, to allow the revision and to speed a little bit the revision. And any applicant is supposed to submit, I would say, latest information, update information, which has been, of course, be part of the file, because when you ask for a revision of an approval, any applicant should submit the latest scientific information, the latest advanced knowledge that will be taken into account to consider the revision of approval. What is, I would say, the main philosophy, the main rationale of the pesticide residue is to ensure an harmonized high level of consumer protection. And you know that the EU, we try to do our best to be sure that the food put at the market are safe for all the consumer, whatever I would say, the nationality of the consumer and whatever the origin of the food. Should it be domestic food or imported? It's the reason why the rationale of pesticide residue regulation is to be sure that every member state apply exactly the same regulation to be put on the market, the high level of consumer, to be sure that all the consumers are highly protected. We do not accept any risk for human. Maximum residue limits are set at the lowest achievable level consistent with the most critical good agricultural practice. And of course, the pesticide residue regulation aims to protect vulnerable groups like children, unborn baby, and so on. On this slide, we have the main directive where we, of course, define this group, which, of course, are most vulnerable. And of course, in this specific pesticide regulation, we took into account the cumulative and synergetic effects. As mentioned, we dedicate a lot of attention to protect the public health, and is the reason why we make also the crop protection applicants and so on about this issue. All we have a single market. It means that the food is able to circulate among the 27 member states. And we try to be sure that all the aspects which are laid out in the pesticide residue are fully transparent and predictable. This slide is to illustrate how the maximum residue limit are set. We took into consideration 3 parameters. The first one is the amount of residue expected in food, plus the data of food consumption, and the third one is the toxicological limits. And all this, I would say, data, residue, food consumption, toxicological limit are evaluated by the European Food Safety Authority. And as already mentioned, the EFSA is responsible for the risk evaluation. Once the report has been issued, it is submitted to the food risk manager, which is the Commission, who will discuss the report, the maximum residue limit submitted by EFSA, and it has been discussed between the Commission and all the 27 member states during specific committee that we call standing committee, which are dedicated to residue, and we have a specific section dealing with the maximum residue limit of pesticide. And the meeting of the section of residue happens many times per year. What are I would say, the rationale to establish new maximum residue limit of pesticide? The new maximum residue limit of pesticides are based on the good agricultural practice in the EU, but also the good agricultural practice in the third country. And of course, it allows us to give some, I would say, derogation to the import of possible commodity of pesticides which are not used in the EU, but still used in third country. It's the reason why we have put in place in our EU regulation what we call import tolerance. It means that you tolerate some commodity for which the third country use some pesticide which is not authorized in the EU, but of course the third country should respect, of course, a lot of conditions to be sure that this import tolerance will give safe products. It's very important. Our new maximum residue limit also established based on the Codex Alimentarius standard, which is very, very important because I would say the international good codex which is responsible to establish food safety standard and norms, and use, of course, what the existing, I would say, maximum residue limit set up by the codex. And of course, you try to be sure that when you carried out establish new maximum residue limit, you are sure that you put in place the same level of stringency in the assessment that you carried out. I would like to draw your attention about a very important point. All the maximum residue limit are valid for all commodity from the EU and third country. It means that this same maximum residue limit applies for all the food and feed put on the EU market, whatever its origin. Should be domestic origin, it means produced in the EU, or should be imported into the EU, it means supplied by the third country. I think it's very important that the EU regulation is applicable not only for the food put on the market produced by the EU, but also imported. This slide is just to illustrate how the EU is, I would say, is behaved vis-à-vis of Codex Alimentarius. What are normally we use the Codex maximum residue limit, and the Codex maximum residue limit are taken over in the EU regulation unless the EU raise concern and express reservation about the international maximum residue limit set up at Codex level. And of course, I would say the old Codex maximum residue limit are implementing during the maximum residue review procedure. if safe to the consumer during the EFSA evaluation. And I told you that the assessment of any active substance and to establish maximum residue limit as carried out at EFSA level. And the new proposed Codex maximum residue limit are assessed in an annual EFSA scientific report, and you can have a look also on the EFSA website, which is very transparent, and it publish all, I would say, our report of EFSA scientific report. And from time to time, we of course we do not follow the Codex Alimentarius maximum residue limit, as mentioned here, but we can say that you have a small proportion, less than 30% of maximum residue limit, which are lower than those established at the Codex level. And it is the report of the study, which has carried out during many years, during 5 years, between 2012 and 2016, we have, of course, make a summary about what is the proportion of maximum residue limit, which are lower than the international one. Besides the pesticide, maximum residue limit of pesticide, I would like to give you some thoughts, some reflection regarding what is the main policy, how we develop our policy of contaminants in food, and how we, on which type of contaminant we put in place regulation. And it will, of course, we have different type of contaminants in the EU and everywhere in the world. We have agricultural contaminants, the nitrate in food of non-animal origin, mycotoxin, I think it's an agricultural contaminant due to bad condition of course, storage mainly, and of course we have a lot of mycotoxin, aflatoxin, ochratoxin A. We have also some agricultural contaminants related to which are present in inherent plant toxin. Besides the agricultural contaminant, we have the environmental and industrial contaminants, heavy metals, mercury, lead, cadmium, dioxin. I remember we have a big, many years ago, many big crisis in dioxin in poultry meat in Belgium. And for example, PCB, polychlorobiphenyl. We have also some contaminants which come from processing activity, acrylamine, furans, polyaromatics. And we have also many other contaminants that we can find. And I think, for example, residue of biocide. It's just to illustrate, I would say, the different category of contaminants will, of course, determine the nature of the measure that the EU will put in place. We have, I would say, general regulation dealing with contaminants. Regulation 315, which has been issued many years ago in 1993. And this regulation gives a lot of type of information regarding the maximum level possible, the action level, the guidance level, and the benchmark level. And you can see of this slide, it's very interesting in this way, that this slide gives some reflection about the main provision of this contaminant regulation 315. What is the main provision? It means that food containing contaminants in an amount which is unacceptable for the public health point of view, in particular for a toxicological level, shall not be placed on the market. I think it's the main provision which is laid down in this regulation. An exceedance of contaminants in a food, this product should not be placed on the market. The good practice to be sure that you put on the market safe contaminant level shall be kept as low as can reasonably be achieved following good practice at all stages of the production, what we call ARARA principle. It means that the level should be as low as we can obtain. We have also a concept of maximum level in this regulation. It means that feed and food placed on the market shall comply with the maximum level. Maximum level are safety level. Feed and food non-compliant with the maximum level, taking into account the measurement uncertainty at laboratory level, shall not be placed on the market or should be withdrawn or recalled from the market. And I think it's very, very important to, of course, to have a look on this regulation, to know all the main provision on what can be done when you deal with contamination. And this regulation also laid down some information regarding guidance value. It means feed and food placed on the market should comply with the guidance level, guidance for accepting or rejecting lots. And it's very important, of course, to deal also with all this information. Just to draw your attention about I think, very important contaminant, it's the presence of mycotoxin, which of course you know better than me that is very, very harmful for the health. And we, since many years, we are dealing with mycotoxin, how to reduce the impact of food contaminated with mycotoxin. What are the main strategy put in place by the EU? It was a very, I would say, a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge because the presence of mycotoxin is due mainly to a bad storage condition. You have to put in place preventive measure. And on this slide, we have some also information how to put in place preventing measure. Good storage, good transport condition. You have to put in place good agricultural practice, not to harvest commodity during, I would say, a bad condition, during rainy season and so on. You have also, besides the preventing measure, to put in place some mitigation toxic effect of mycotoxin. And of course, it is possible with the EU regulation to put in place some mitigation effect. You have also the possibility to put in place some detoxification, but also you have to be sure that the food is not too much contaminated with mycotoxin. To be sure that the level was reduced at the minimum, you have to put in place regulatory measure by putting in place maximum level or depending on the contaminants, guidance level. But with the mycotoxin, we are talking about maximum level, not exceeding the maximum. This slide just illustrates what are the main driving force to put in place new EU regulation based on contaminants. For example, maybe some of you remember the worst case of melamine, which occurred many years in China, and which was responsible, I would say, for many contamination incidents. And we, in the EU, we have put in place some measure to reduce the exportation, the import of melamine to the EU, how to reduce at the minimum the contamination. We have also, for example, we set new risk at EU level, new risk assessment in case of inorganic arsenic or non-dioxin like PCB. We update from time to time risk assessment. For example, it was the case recently for cadmium, mercury, ochratoxin A, lead. We are obliged to take into account the new scientific development to review the risk assessment to see if the maximum limit which has put in place is still relevant. We develop new approach in risk assessment, for example, for nitrate in vegetable and so on. We have to face with new emerging contaminants. For example, we have 3-methyl ester. We have also brominate flame retardant. You have also some change in the production, and for example, mycotoxin, phycotoxin, and it means that all these new elements should, of course, lead the Commission and Member States to see if there is a need to change the contaminant regulation. This slide gives you an illustration about the policy put in place by the EU regarding the fight against contaminants. And you have what we call this Commission Implementation Regulation 884/2014. It's a regulation which try to minimize the level of aflatoxin in the food, and all, I would say, exceeding of maximum level of aflatoxin in food should be destroyed. And this measure taken to protect public health has been taken since 2014 in pistachio from different countries. You can see pistachio for Iran, Turkey, pistachio from Iran and Turkey, groundnuts from Egypt, and so on. And you can see that when there is a need to put in place a specific regulation to reduce the impact of contamination of some commodity, and you know that pistachio, groundnuts, figs, and so on can have high level of contaminant of aflatoxin. We are obliged to put in place specific regulation to be sure to put in place a reinforced check at the border control post to be sure that the food imported into the EU is safe for a consumer. I would like to conclude my presentation regarding the EU management system of pesticide contaminants to conclude by the following. The EU has a very open and transparent system in terms of evaluation. There is a clear separation between the risk assessment and the risk management. All, I would say, EU measures are based on scientific assessment, and these scientific assessments are carried out by the European Food Safety Authority. The EU takes over Codex Maximum Residue Limit into the EU Maximum Residue Limit regulation, unless there are health concerns, and I show you some presentation regarding the way we are considering that. The EU participates actively in all international debate related to pesticides and contaminants. We have a very robust and harmonized food safety management system which is applied throughout all the EU member states. It means that all the EU member states should use the same level of regulation. We try to take into account all the lessons learned from sanitary risk to improve regulation. And I would say the best example is the dioxin crisis in Belgium many years ago, which of course pushed the Commission and member state to put in place specific maximum residue limit for dioxin. And the strength of this EU system, it's very useful because you can inform member state and third country through two important tools, the rapid alert system and the traces, to be able to identify the traceability of all the food products and to be able to trace back if we discover non-satisfactory products. Thank you for your attention.